With Kraven the Hunter set to release in theaters this Friday, it's kind of funny and bold of Sony to say, you know what? Kraven was so good, Morbius was so good, Madam Web was perfect. But then I feel like, you know what? We're ending this universe off with something, I guess. So it's just been announced that Sony is ending their little Sony spin-off villain universe with Marvel, and I have a feeling like, yeah, it took them 6 years to realize that these movies weren't even all that good, and the only way to actually do a good solo film is that these are villains, and the only key factor is Spider-Man. I'm not gonna act like I had some fun with these films. These things were a little okay, what are you doing? And oh, these decisions you're making are really making it complicated to be on your side on this one. Like I remember when they first announced this after the Amazing Spider-Man 2, where they said, you know what, we're canceling all our projects here. We're gonna be doing our own little Sony spin-off universe, starting off with Venom and a couple new Marvel characters that are associated with Spider-Man. At first, I said, okay, we're doing a Venom spin-off movie that actually going to introduce the symbiote. We're going to get Eddie Brock in this, so like that when we meet up with Tom Holland, they're going to be a good duo, and he's going to get the symbiote suit, right? Sony said, yeah, he's going to meet up with Spider-Man, but we're going to set him up first. And that's been some of the problem with these movies. These movies try to set up Spider-Man in a way where it's like, he is a character that's associated with these guys, but you can't mention Spider-Man and have no connections with it whatsoever. You can, but then again, later along the line, as the movie's going to be released, that's just going to be taken out of the movie. Like, I remember when that first teaser for Venom came out where it didn't even show Venom and you had to show, oh, this is Tom Hardy and some effects that don't even look like they're finished, that there were early on in the beginning of production. And then once you see the end tag where you just see his eyes and his teeth, and then the letters form a certain V where it's like, and when that movie came out, I was a little bit disappointed in it. I said, "Yeah, but I don't like the choices you made here. But hopefully, now that you set Venom up and Eddie Brock, hopefully in the sequel, when you do that, you could fix up a little things from the first film." And they kind of did. After Venom, we got Morbius, and I said, "Okay, this is another villain." I feel like, yeah, if you were to introduce Blade earlier on in the MCU, it would actually help it make sense. Since I already know that Morbius the Living Vampire is technically a Blade and Spider-Man villain. But the way they try to introduce him, where it's like, oh, he's an anti-hero. He's not really a bad guy. He's just infected with this serum that actually affected his blood. And it's like, technically that's not a villain. And it was the trailers that kept me interested because at first I said, okay, this is some generic Sony spin off villain thing. It looks interesting. Some of the action looks nice. But then when you realize that, oh, wait, this is supposed to be connecting to the MCU. And after Far From Home, where they said, oh, he's on the run. And you saw little background posters of Spider-Man with murder on the wall and that the Vulture was going to be showing up. I said, "Whoa, wait a minute, is this in the MCU?" Because I don't even know if it is, but then again, it was like speculation hit us. But then all that hype died down after the pandemic, after No Way Home, because they released Morbius back in 2021. That was the plan, or 2021 of the two. That Sony schedule was shifted back and forth. Where at first we had Venom, then Morbius, then we were supposed to get Let There Be Carnage, and then a random movie right after that that wasn't even announced yet. But after the pandemic, it was Venom, Let There Be Carnage, and then Morbius was going to release later that January, and that was quite an experience. That movie's bad, but at least it would had some redeemable moments. Like some of the action looked cool, some of the effects looked nice. Matt Smith, even though he was at least a little bit corny than what I would have expected for a movie like this, he was having some fun with it. And yeah, that little dance sequence, it kind of beat Toby's.
Except for put my hands in yes, put my best of best, put my 10 or put my spend to spend, have size, except for put my hands in yes, put my best of best, put my 10.
But after Morbius, it was like, okay, Sony announced these other movies where I feel like some of them have potential, but then again, it's like, why you're wasting characters like this? Like they first announced Madam Web, and I said, oh, we're gonna be doing the Spider-Verse in live action, right? But no, we're not technically doing that since they didn't want to include Spider-Man in it in a way where I'm like, this character is closely associated with Spider-Man and can see through the web of life and destiny, so you're not going to be doing that? Kraven was another one where I felt like, okay, we're going to be setting up another villain, but they also said they were going to be introducing many Spider-Man villains in that film too, like the Rhino, the Chameleon, which I said, okay, those are cool villains that you're going to use for this, but the MCU is like right there, and you're like, we haven't even seen some of these guys on the big screen or done right on the big screen so far. And that's the thing that kind of sucked about these Sony movies, because the fact that Sony says specifically that you can't use these villains in the MCU, or if they've been done in a movie before, you can't use these, and you have to figure out some other villains you can use. That thought was kind of weird to me, because I feel like, wait a minute, if these are Spider-Man villains and you're doing them in a separate universe, and if you want to do them in the MCU, you could plant seeds to have them in it, because Homecoming did it best too. Spider-Man Homecoming introduced the Tinkerer, they had Scorpion, they had especially two versions of the Shocker. Spider-Man Far From Home almost did a version of the Elementals, but I basically saw Hydro Man first, and I said, okay, so this is some way you could try to bring in Hydro Man into this, even though it wasn't real. It technically was a way of introducing it. Even their main villains too, like the Vulture and Mysterio. Those guys haven't been done on screen, and this is the first time we're seeing them done in the MCU, where it's like, okay, these are so far some of the best villains we've seen in a Spider-Man film. But taking away some more iconic villains like Rhino, basically the Chameleon, which that tech exists in the MCU if you think about it, and Kraven, which with the story with Kraven that baffles me the most. Like back when Black Panther was in production, Ryan Coogler said, "Oh, I wanted to plant scenes for some villains or little side characters in the background," and he wanted to include Kraven at some point. So like in the MCU, you could set him up. Where I'm like, oh, that's not too bad. And at least he's trying to use some of these characters. But Sony said, nah, you know what? We need him for right now. We're trying to do an origin film. So like that, we can set him up to fight Spider-Man in the future. And that was almost the plan for No Way Home. Instead of doing the multiverse route, they were going to go to a Kraven's Last Hunt almost inspired story where, since at the end of Far From Home, his identity was exposed to the public, and who else is going to be on the hunt to fight the deadliest predator that's actually revealed to the world, known as Spider-Man, which I have a feeling like that would have been a good, interesting movie if they didn't go the multiverse route. And it would have been a more boots on the ground Spider-Man film, since we've seen him do extraordinary things in the MCU, but we haven't seen a small scale grounded Spider-Man since. I know we did that in Homecoming, but something akin to, yeah, this is your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. I have these couple people in my life. We did see some of that in No Way Home, him being vulnerable, but we haven't seen him to a point where he's being hunted, where everybody has his eyes on him. Venom, at least for the most part, in this whole Sonyverse, is the only one that's actually had success, since everybody knows Venom, and I feel like that's the most easiest one, where it's like, yeah, Venom can work with and without Spider-Man, because the whole Eddie Brock and Venom dynamic is still the same throughout the movies. But a couple things where it's like the post-credit scene for Venom 2 actually teased him meeting up with Spider-Man. No, you go see No Way Home, and it's like, oh, he came to leave, but the symbiote's still in the MCU somewhere. And when Venom: The Last Dance came out, I enjoyed it for what it was. But then again, it changed a couple things where it's like, oh, so him knowing about Spider-Man is retconned, and they changed that whole ending scene. And somewhere along the lines, I have a feeling like Spider-Man was supposed to be in that script somewhere, or at least try to at least figure out a way to put the white spider emblem symbol on his chest, where I feel like, I don't know where he would have gotten a spider inspiration, but then again, looking at the creatures that were chasing him in the movie, I feel like they're almost spider-like, and you could at least put something on his chest that's like white instead of doing the white veiny look. But what makes this whole thing worse is the fact that Kraven was supposed to be coming out next year in October, but now that it's been delayed with a couple reshoots, they changed up a couple things. I don't even know what Spider-Man elements they've taken out of this film. I just know that Sony, we know through the bullshit. We saw through Madam Web, and it's like, damn, you had success right there, but I don't even know what you could have done, because the only thing they have going for right now is Beyond the Spider-Verse and Spider-Man 4, which I have a feeling like, yeah, they're trying to screw up that film. I want small, grounded Spider-Man with Daredevil and Kingpin, but they want to go with Tobey and Andrew or a multiverse thing, since it's supposed to be releasing, I guess, between Doomsday and Secret Wars, and I don't know how that timeline is going to work. Like, I know we're going to see him in an Avengers movie at some point, but I have a feeling like, yeah, it would be smart to at least delay those two Avengers films that haven't come out, one this year, one next year, like Infinity War and Endgame, and at least give him one more movie before he goes into this whole multiverse adventure again, because we can't just be going multiverse back to back. I want to see something big, but then again, I want to see something small and personal. Those are my thoughts about the end of the Sonyverse. It was a good experiment for what it lasted for, but at least I can say that DC, for the most part, with their villain films, for what they have now, Joker, yes, the second was a little bit mixed between me and some other people. They at least knew a way to actually use that character without using their main hero as the foil in their movies. Same thing with the Penguin series. That Penguin series had Batman nowhere until the very last end of the film. You basically saw the bat symbol in the sky, and that was like, oh, there's Batman. But you had a good, compelling story, and the fact that you didn't even need Batman throughout that whole thing, knowing he's out there doing his thing, says, yeah, these characters are interesting enough on their own, and they don't always need their main hero to be on their side. I just want to say thank God this universe is dead, and hopefully Sony can work on to bigger and better things. Spider-Man is supposed to be their main priority, but I have a feeling like hopefully they could try to learn from this and not do this again whatsoever. Or at least have the guts to say, you know what, we don't know what to do with this. Marvel Studios, do you want them? So like that, we can get a couple new Spider-Man adventures, and hopefully enough a new lineup of villains, which they could at least be treated with some respect, and hopefully they don't get tainted by this. Alright guys, thank you guys for watching. Leave a like, subscribe if you haven't already. All my social media is down in the description below. And I'll see you guys with that Kraven review because that tells me I'm in for something this weekend.